Behind a locked door in a crumbling archive, researchers found something that was never meant to be found. Boxes of records, sealed for over a century, wrapped in wax, and stamped with a single warning, not to be opened. When they finally broke the seal, the air itself seemed to change. Names, dates, testimonies, all erased from every history book you have ever read. These were not lost documents. They were buried on purpose. Someone, decades ago, made the deliberate choice to bury the truth so deep that entire generations would grow up never knowing it existed. And when word got out that these boxes had been opened, phone calls came within hours. Lawyers, officials, people with old family names, and older grudges, all demanding the same thing. Put it back. Seal it again. Pretend this never happened. But it was too late. Because once you see what was inside those boxes, you cannot unsee it. This is the story of a secret so dangerous, so unimaginable, that an entire institution was built around keeping it hidden, and the handful of people brave enough to drag it into the light. What were they so afraid of you finding? By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why they tried to stop it. Every word you are about to hear comes from those pages. To understand what was found, you have to go back to a place built far from prying eyes, on purpose. In the mid-1800s, a private institution rose on a stretch of land chosen specifically for its isolation. No roads worth mentioning, no neighbors close enough to ask questions. Officially, it was a place of research and care. Unofficially, it became something else entirely. The men who ran it answered to no oversight board, no public inspector, no one but the wealthy patrons who funded it and expected results, and silence. For decades, people were brought there, some willingly, many were not. Families were told their loved ones had been sent away for treatment, for their own good. Letters home grew shorter. Then they stopped coming altogether. Local record keepers noticed a strange pattern developing year after year. Intake numbers climbing steadily, but almost no discharge records to match them. Where did they go? For over 100 years, that question sat unanswered, buried under layers of bureaucracy, fire damage, and conveniently missing paperwork. The official story, repeated for generations by everyone who bothered to ask, was simple. The institution closed quietly, its records destroyed in an accidental blaze. Case closed, they said. Except, the fire never happened. Historians cross-referencing old insurance ledgers found something impossible. The very warehouse, said to have burned to the ground, was still standing, sealed shut, decades later, untouched. Someone had not destroyed the evidence at all. They had hidden it, carefully, and they had done it well enough to fool historians for over a century. Investigators later learned that the institution's leadership had drafted an internal memo decades earlier, instructing staff never to discuss discharge numbers with outside visitors under any circumstances. Inside that sealed warehouse, researchers uncovered thousands of individual case files, each one a life reduced to a number, a diagnosis, and a signature. Reading them felt less like historical research, and more like trespassing on something that was never supposed to leave that room. The files described treatments that, even by the standards of their time, were recorded with a strange clinical detachment, procedures performed without consent, experiments justified as necessary observation, and outcomes that were never once reported back to a single family member waiting at home. Cross-checking names against surviving town census records revealed something the institution's leadership clearly never expected anyone to notice. Dozens of patients listed simply as transferred had no destination on record anywhere, no receiving facility, no forwarding address, no trace. They simply stopped existing on paper. Then came the moment that changed everything. Buried near the bottom of the final crate, researchers found a single ledger, different from all the rest, handwritten, unsigned, and clearly never meant to be filed alongside the official records. It was not a medical document at all. It was a financial one, a running tally of payments received from families in exchange for extended care, matched against a second column, tracking exactly how long each patient could be profitably kept before resources ran out. The horrifying truth was not some grand conspiracy of murder or monsters hiding in the dark. It was worse. In its own quiet way, an entire system built on ordinary greed, dressed up in the language of medicine and charity, where human beings became line items in someone's private ledger. The silence that followed was not an accident. It was a business decision, made in a boardroom, on paper, in ink, and for over 100 years, it worked exactly as intended. One entry showed something chilling: payments rising sharply, the very weak discharges dropped to zero. When researchers went public with what they had found, the response was immediate and deeply telling. Descendants of the institution's original financial backers hired lawyers within days, arguing the records were private property, never meant for publication or public eyes. Local officials suddenly rediscovered zoning technicalities that could conveniently block any further excavation of the site. Requests for follow-up research funding mysteriously stalled again and again, without explanation. Nobody was arrested. Nobody was formally punished. Every person named in that ledger had been dead for generations, long past the reach of any court or any consequence. And that, in many ways, is the most unsettling part of this entire story. There was no dramatic trial, no satisfying final moment of justice, only the slow, uncomfortable work of putting real names back onto people who had been reduced to numbers on a page. Descendant families who came forward described a strange, aching grief, mourning relatives they never even knew they had lost, for reasons no one had ever told them. Local historical societies, once reluctant to even discuss the site publicly, began quietly updating their own records to reflect the truth. But here is why this still matters today. The same conditions that allowed this to happen, isolation, unchecked power, institutions accountable to no one but their own profit margins, still exist today, in different forms, in different places. Vulnerable people are still, in various corners of the world, treated as line items rather than human beings deserving dignity. This is not only a story about the past, it is a warning about exactly what happens whenever we stop asking hard questions and let convenient silence become official policy. Journalists who tried interviewing descendants were met with the same rehearsed phrase. Every single time, every buried secret survives on one thing and one thing only: silence. Not the silence of the dead, but the silence of the living. The people who could have asked questions and simply chose not to, who could have looked closer and turned away instead. This history stayed hidden for over a century, not because it was perfectly concealed, but because no one dared to open that door. That is the real lesson here. Power does not need to destroy the truth in order to bury it. It only needs enough people willing to look away. So the next time something feels sealed off, sanitized, or explained a little too neatly, ask yourself what isn't being said, because somewhere, right now, in some quiet town you have never heard of, another door just like that one is waiting to be found. What would you do if you were the one who found it? Tell me in the comments below. And if this kind of forbidden history unsettles you as much as it unsettles me, subscribe, because there are darker doors still waiting to be opened.